In the year 530 before our era, the most powerful man on earth met his match, not on a grand battlefield, but in the unforgiving steppes of Central Asia, at the hands of a woman whose name would be etched into history as both liberator and executioner. What followed shocked even the battle-hardened warriors of the ancient world. Queen Tomyris of the Massagetae delivered a punishment so brutal it redefined the very concept of royal vengeance. This is not merely a tale of military defeat. It is a chilling testament to how absolute power, when challenged, can unleash forces more savage than any torture device ever conceived. The Persian Empire under Cyrus the Great had become an unstoppable juggernaut, stretching from the Mediterranean Sea to the Hindu Kush. For 30 years, Cyrus conquered one kingdom after another, blending military prowess with calculated mercy, a formula that had never failed him. His empire was the largest the world had ever known, built on the bones of fallen realms and the subjugation of countless peoples. But in the year 530 before our era, this seemingly invincible emperor set his sights on the wild lands beyond the Jaxartes, where the Massagetae roamed freely under the iron rule of their warrior queen. The Massagetae were unlike the civilized kingdoms Cyrus had previously subdued. These were nomadic warriors who lived by the sword, drank the blood of Mars mixed with milk, and revered the god of war above all. Their society was forged in constant battle, cattle raids, and the harsh laws of survival that governed the endless steppes. Women fought alongside men, and leadership was earned through martial prowess, not birthright. In this brutal world, Queen Tomyris rose to power not through political intrigue, but by proving herself the most ruthless and capable warrior among her people. When Cyrus first approached Massagetae territory, he employed his usual strategy, diplomacy backed by overwhelming force. Historical accounts from Herodotus suggest Cyrus initially sought to marry Tomyris, likely viewing it as an easy way to annex her kingdom without bloodshed. But Tomyris saw through this transparent ploy for political submission. Her response was swift and unequivocal. She would never bow to foreign rule, and any Persian who set foot on Massagetae land would find only death. The insult demanded not just conquest, but total domination. Cyrus began planning a campaign he believed would be his last, one that would bring the steppes under Persian control and add Tomyris to the list of vanquished monarchs. He had no idea he was walking into a trap more cunning than any he had faced before. The initial Persian advance into Massagetae territory went precisely according to Cyrus's plan. His engineers built a bridge across the Jaxartes, a feat of engineering that showcased Persia's technical superiority over the nomadic tribes. Scouts reported that the Massagetae were retreating deeper into their lands, seemingly unwilling to face the mighty Persian army in open battle. To Cyrus, this confirmed his belief. Barbarian courage crumbled before civilized military might. He pressed forward with confidence, his army of veterans slicing through the steppes like a blade through flesh. But Tomyris was not retreating out of fear. She was luring the Persians away from their supply lines into terrain where her cavalry held every advantage. The steppes, which seemed empty and lifeless to the Persians, were in fact teeming with hidden springs, secret camps, and carefully planned ambush points that the Massagetae had used for centuries. Each mile the Persians advanced took them farther from safety and deeper into the kill zone that Tomyris had begun preparing the moment she received Cyrus's marriage proposal. The trap was sprung with terrifying efficiency. Tomyris ordered a portion of her forces to retreat in full view of the Persian vanguard, luring them toward what appeared to be the main Massagetae camp. When the Persians attacked this seemingly vulnerable target, they found it guarded by only a token force that quickly withdrew. The camp was stocked with supplies, including a large quantity of wine, a luxury the Massagetae rarely indulged in. Cyrus's soldiers, confident of an easy victory, began celebrating their conquest, reveling in the captured wine, unaware they were drinking their doom. Among the celebrants was Spargophasus, Tomyris' son, captured in a skirmish alongside other high-ranking Massagetae warriors. But this capture was no accident. It was part of Tomyris' broader strategy. She knew that her son's capture would drive her to act with the full fury of a mother's vengeance, providing the perfect justification for the brutal reckoning she had already planned. When news of her son's capture reached her, Tomyris sent Cyrus a message that revealed both her strategic brilliance and her deep understanding of Persian weaknesses. The message, recorded by Herodotus, was a masterpiece of psychological warfare disguised as a diplomatic overture. Tomyris offered to trade 1/3 of her army for her son's return, appealing to Cyrus's sense of honor and his confidence in Persia's military superiority. She implied that Cyrus would surely prefer to face her army in open battle rather than resort to holding women and children hostage. The message was crafted to make refusal seem cowardly, and acceptance give Tomyris exactly what she needed, a legitimate pretext for annihilating the Persian army. Cyrus, perhaps blinded by his string of victories, made the fatal decision to refuse the offer. Instead, he chose to use Spargophasus as a hostage to force Tomyris' submission, not realizing he was dealing with a culture where death in battle was more honorable than life in captivity. When Spargophasus realized he had become a tool in his captor's political games, he chose the path demanded by Massagetae honor. According to historical sources, he requested a momentary loosening of his bonds and then seized the opportunity to take his own life, preferring death to serving as leverage against his mother and people. The news of her son's death struck Tomyris like lightning, transforming her from a calculated strategist into an instrument of pure vengeance. Historical records indicate her grief was boundless, but it instantly turned into a rage that would stain the steppes with Persian blood. She sent Cyrus a final message, and the words that have come down to us reveal the terrifying resolve of a mother who had lost everything dear to her. This was no longer a matter of territorial dispute or political independence. It had become personal in the most dangerous sense. Her message was brief, but chilling in its intent. Bloodthirsty Cyrus, do not bride yourself on what has happened with that wine which you Persians fill yourselves to madness, so that when it enters your bodies, evil words rise up from you. Do not rejoice in such a victory, or destroy my son. Here is my good advice. Return my son to me and leave my land unharmed. But if you do not, I swear by the Sun, Lord of the Massagetae, I will give you your fill of blood, however much you thirst for it. In the culture of the Massagetae, blood held sacred significance, and Tomyris' words were not merely a threat, but a ritual vow binding her to a singular form of vengeance. This was no ordinary military challenge. It was a promise of something far more personal and terrifying. The phrase, "I will give you your fill of blood," carried a meaning that would only be revealed after the final confrontation. Cyrus, steeped in Persian notions of honor and unfamiliar with the religious practices of the Massagetae, likely dismissed it as barbarian bravado rather than the sacred oath it truly was. With diplomacy exhausted and her son's death demanding retribution, Queen Tomyris mobilized the full military might of the Massagetae tribal confederation. This was not just her own horde, but an alliance of related nomadic peoples who recognized her authority and shared her resolve to drive the Persians from their homeland. The forces she gathered were unlike any army Cyrus had faced before. This was no disciplined formation with supply trains and siege engines, but a swarm of mounted warriors capable of striking without warning and vanishing into the vast steppes. The Massagetae's military system was perfectly adapted to their way of life and environment. Every warrior was trained from childhood to be an expert horseman, able to shoot accurately from a galloping horse. They wielded composite bows capable of piercing Persian armor at distances that rendered traditional tactics useless. Their hardy steppe ponies could graze on grass and cover vast distances without tiring, giving the Massagetae a mobility unmatched by the Persian cavalry, which relied on grain and regular rest. Above all, they fought for their homeland against invaders, their motivation surpassing that of any mercenary soldiers. Tomyris positioned her forces with an intimate knowledge of the terrain that the Persians entirely lacked. She chose a battlefield where the Persian advantages, heavy infantry and siege equipment, were rendered useless, while her mounted archers held every edge. Historical sources suggest the battle took place near a river crossing where Persian retreat was difficult, but the Massagetae could withdraw in any direction. Every element of her plan turned the Persian strength into weakness while amplifying her own tactical advantages. The battle itself bore no resemblance to the organized conflicts that had made Cyrus famous in the ancient world. There were no neat formations, no gradual escalation, no chance for negotiation or surrender. The Massagetae attack descended like a force of nature. Thousands of horsemen appeared simultaneously from multiple directions, filling the air with arrows, vanishing into the steppe only to reappear and strike from another angle. The Persian heavy infantry, the backbone of Cyrus's past victories, found itself unable to close with an enemy that refused to fight by conventional rules. Cyrus himself, according to various sources, fell in the thick of battle. Some claim he was struck by an arrow while trying to rally his men. Others say he was surrounded and cut down during a desperate cavalry charge. What is certain is that his death marked the complete collapse of Persian resistance. Without their legendary commander, the army disintegrated into scattered bands of survivors desperately trying to reach safety. Most never made it back to Persia. Their bones were left to bleach under the endless steppe sky they had sought to conquer. But for Tomyris, Cyrus's death in battle was not enough to atone for her son's loss. According to Herodotus and other ancient sources, Ptolemaides ordered her warriors to find the emperor's body among the fallen Persians, a task that required combing through thousands of corpses scattered across the battlefield. When the body was finally located and brought before her, she stood face to face with the remains of the man hailed as the greatest conqueror in human history. What followed was one of the most shocking acts of posthumous vengeance ever recorded. The queen commanded that a wineskin be filled with wine mixed with human blood, specifically Persian blood, collected from the bodies of those who had followed their emperor into the steppes. This was not cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was a meticulously planned ritual tied directly to her earlier vow to give Cyrus his fill of blood. In Massagetae religious tradition, blood was the essence of life force, and its consumption was a means of transferring power from the dead to the living. By forcing Cyrus to receive his, quote, fill of blood in death, Ptolemaides was not merely exacting revenge. She was performing a sacred act meant to bind his spirit and deny it peace. Once the gruesome preparation was complete, Ptolemaides personally took Cyrus's severed head and plunged it into the blood-filled wineskin. According to chroniclers, she addressed the dead emperor. "I live and have conquered you in battle, but you destroyed me by taking my son through deceit. I will fulfill my threat and give you your fill of blood." This act was not done in a fit of rage, but as a cold, calculated ritual, showcasing the depth of her commitment to vengeance and the alien nature of Massagetae justice to Persian sensibilities. The symbolism was immediately clear to any Massagetae, but utterly horrifying to civilized observers from Persia or the Greek world. By immersing Cyrus's head in blood, Tomyris ensured his spirit would remain forever trapped in a cycle of thirst and consumption, unable to find rest in the afterlife. This was not just the humiliation of a defeated enemy. It was an eternal punishment for violating the sacred bonds of motherhood and honor. The sheer scale of her vengeance reflected the depth of Cyrus's crime in the eyes of Massagetae culture. Word of his death and the treatment of his body spread quickly through the ancient world, carried by the few surviving Persians and traders who witnessed the aftermath. The story took on mythic proportions. Some versions emphasized Tomyris' military genius, others the gruesome fate of the great emperor. Greek historians, including Herodotus, preserved the tale not only as historical fact, but as a moral lesson, a warning about the perils of hubris and the dire cost of underestimating an enemy. The immediate consequences of the defeat were catastrophic for the empire Cyrus had built. The loss of its founder and a significant portion of its military strength triggered a succession crisis that threatened to tear the empire apart. Cyrus's son, Cambyses, eventually took the throne, but the Persian expansion, once seemingly unstoppable, was permanently halted at its northern frontier. No subsequent Persian ruler dared challenge the Massagetae, and the steppes remained free from imperial control for centuries. The psychological impact of Tomyris's victory extended far beyond military considerations. She proved that even the mightiest empire in the world could be brought low by a people deemed barbaric, and that the distinctions between civilization and savagery were far more complex than imperial propagandists claimed. The image of Cyrus the Great's head submerged in blood became a potent symbol of the limits of imperial power and the dire consequences of underestimating an opponent, especially when family honor and cultural survival were at stake. Modern historians continued to debate the details of these events. Ancient sources sometimes contradict one another, and archaeological evidence from the steppes is sparse. However, the core narrative, a nomadic queen defeating a vast imperial army through superior tactics and intimate knowledge of the terrain, is corroborated by multiple independent accounts. This story resonates through the centuries precisely because it challenges conventional notions of power, gender, and the nature of civilization itself. The methods Tomyris used to overcome Cyrus reveal her keen understanding of psychological warfare, strategic deception, and cultural differences. Her use of her son's capture as a catalyst for total war, her manipulation of the Persian code of honor, and her choice of battlefield all demonstrate a level of military thinking her enemies failed to recognize. The brutality of her final act of vengeance was not mindless savagery, but a carefully calculated act designed to deliver a message that would deter future invasions. Perhaps most crucially, Tomyris's story forces us to reflect on the nature of justice and the proportionality of response. From the Persian perspective, Cyrus was conducting standard imperial expansion, employing methods that had brought him success throughout his career. From Tomyris's perspective, he was an invader who killed her son and threatened her people's existence. The clash of these worldviews produced violence that shocked even the battle-hardened ancient world, reminding us that the most horrific conflicts arise not from pure evil, but from irreconcilable differences in values and perspectives. Ultimately, Tomyris achieved what no other opponent of Cyrus the Great ever did. She did not merely defeat him, she erased him. The Persian Empire survived his death and continued to expand in other directions, but its northern frontier remained forever closed to imperial ambitions. The steppes that swallowed Cyrus and his army remained free, guarded by the memory of a queen who proved that even the greatest conqueror in history could be crushed by someone more relentless than he could ever imagine. Her legacy stands as a testament to the terrifying power of maternal vengeance and the price empires pay when they mistake cultural differences for weakness.